In this video, we're talking about Prism Lens FX filters. There are different types, how best to use them, my favorite ones, as well as some tips and tricks on how to maximize them either in photo or video mode. Hi, I'm John Clemente. I'm a hobbyist photographer and videographer based out of Brooklyn, New York by way of Manila, Philippines. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome. And if you've been here before, thank you very much for the view. I really do appreciate it. I hope you all consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you know when next I drop new videos about photography tips, tech reviews, and all the random shenanigans I do with all of my creative friends. So back to the topic at hand, Prism Lens FX filters. These little cool things are threaded onto your lens so you could add in-camera effects to your photos or videos. They come in a pretty nondescript box, and on each order you get one ginormous microfiber cloth and a card thanking you for your patronage. The filters themselves will come in their own individual pouches. I've ordered quite a number of them because I really do like the different types of effects that it adds onto your images and to your footage. They're also at a very friendly price point. Most of these filters will have equivalents to different brands that are sometimes 50 to 100% more expensive than these ones. They come in either the 77mm or 4x5mm filter versions. I think the best way to show you how these filters work is by showing you the samples in real time. So I'm going to attach different types of filters on this lens, and we're going to talk through what sort of effect it tries to convey. The most dramatic effect that I have currently is the center split diopter filter. Basically, it has a magnifying lens version of a filter with the center of the lens cut out, so that will be clear and both sides will have some form of magnification distortion happening on them. The filter itself can turn, so you can move the effect circularly around the lens. Right now I have the split of the filter vertically, but I can also turn and have the effect horizontally. This filter you use if you want to focus on one particular subject and have that dreamy, distorted, magnified look on either of its sides. So this next filter is the split diopter. It is much like the center split diopter, but instead of having a slit down the middle, this only has the magnifying lens, concave, convex lens version on one side. Same thing, you can angle the filter however which way you need in your image. The next dramatic filter that I have are the Flare FX filters. I was lucky enough to order all three of their current versions. These filters go out of stock quite a lot, so if you find one that you like, it's best to get them as soon as you can. So the Flare FX filters have multiple chromatic bands within the filter itself, and that way it'll distort the light sources and make it a little bit more elongated and stretched. A little bit more of that anamorphic flare effect that we see in different types of movies. We're going to start with the Rainbow Flare FX version. As you can see, I have my RGB lights over here, and its flare is now elongated. It's a little bit more pronounced. And to highlight the effect of this filter even more, I'm going to shine my flashlight onto the lens. The flare itself has a rainbow color. The strands within the filter are in 3 different colors so that you can see that rainbow flare effect. And like most of their filters, you could turn the angle of the effect to whatever that you desire. This is the orange flare version. And this is the blue Flare FX version. Next filter is the Chromatic Flare filter. Unlike the blue, orange, or rainbow Flare FX filter, this one just has one chromatic band right in the center, and that is going to be like the main focal point for the flare slash anamorphic effect that you'll have in your image. As you can see, the band will be a little bit more thicker than the Flare FX, a little bit more pronounced. And as usual, you could also turn the filter to angle the flare however which way that you want them. The last and the recent most popular filter that has been out there in the market will be the Dream FX filter. The Dream FX filter just cuts down on the digital sharpness of the image. It makes lights a little bit glowier. It also has the added effect of making the skin a little bit softer. So this way, if you need your image to be a little bit more soft for that cinematic effect, these are the types of filters that you'd want to get. The effect is quite subtle, so in order to really demonstrate the change, I'm just going to hold the filter in front of the lens and shine my flashlight on it. Now I'm holding up the Dream FX filter. So as you can see, the RGB lights now are a little bit softer. You can see the glow of the flashlight with the Dream FX filter and the glow of it without. There's a comparable product of the Dream FX filter from Moment called the Cinebloom 10% or 20% filters. They kind of do the same thing. They just make the image slightly softer, cut that digital sharpness, make those light sources bloom a little bit, and make it a little bit more flattering to the skin. This Cinebloom filter that I have is 20%, which is a little bit bloomier than the Dream FX filter. So here's another sample again. Now it's like a lot hazier than the Dream FX filter. Let's do a side-by-side comparison of the Moment Cinebloom 20% and the Prism Lens FX Dream FX filter. So those are the different FX filters that I have. There are a few other Prism Lens FX filter in their store that I opted not to get. These are the kaleidoscope and the linear prism versions. For my taste, those effects are a little bit too dramatic, a little bit too one-off. I won't be able to subtly squeeze it in different footages that I'll be doing. I like my filters a little bit more on the cinematic side rather than the effects side. So the Dream FX filter, as well as the Chromatic Flare and Flare FX filters are the ones that I really do like using a lot. So here are a few tips on how to use your Prism Lens FX filters. Firstly, the Prism Lens FX filters work best in medium to longer focal lengths. Secondly, the effects show best in wider apertures, preferably f2 and below. Our tests were shown at 24 millimeters at f1.4. I'll put the Rainbow Flare FX filter again, but jack up the aperture at 4 and you'll see the difference of the effects of the Rainbow Flare itself. So for the Rainbow Flare effect, it is still showing bits. Now it's a little too harsh and a little too sharp, but it still works. Let's try the split diopter at f4. For the center split diopter, you can see these cuts in the lens itself a little bit more prominently. That's just because the image is a little bit sharper, so it has more things in focus and you're seeing that cut a little bit more. Because the Prism Lens FX filters are only at 77 millimeters, if you have lenses that are either 72 millimeters or 82 millimeters, you'll need step up and step down rings in order to fit them onto your lens. So it's best to order a couple of these as well. Because it is advised to shoot these Lens FX filters at wider apertures, if you're shooting video and you want to abide by the 180-degree rule and keep your shutter at either 50 on a 24 frames per second shoot or 60 at a 30 frames per second shoot, the question is, will you be able to stack the filters so that you could add an ND filter on top of your Prism Lens FX filter? And the short answer is yes. It's a little bit tricky though, and I'll show you a couple of things that I found out through my different experimentation. So most of our ND filters are at an 82 millimeter thread. It's very easy to add a step up ring onto your Prism Lens FX filter to get to 82. This is the split diopter Prism Lens FX filter at 77 millimeter filter thread. I will then add a 77 to 82 millimeter step up ring. And then from there, I can add my 82 millimeter filter thread variable ND. Voila, it stacks properly and it does work. The trickier part is if you want to put your 77 millimeter filter thread onto an 82 millimeter thread lens. It's not as simple as adding a step down ring from your 82 millimeter variable ND, because most 82 millimeter variable NDs that I have do not have filter threads on the outside. They assume that the variable ND is the absolute last layer that you have onto your lens. That's why you can't just stack a step down ring from the variable ND, so you can fit smaller filters after that. This is my 15 to 35 RF lens, and it is an 82mm thread. In order for me to add my Prism Lens FX filter here with an ND filter, it's a multi-step process. I'll first need to put the 82mm to 77mm step down ring onto the lens. I will then add the Prism Lens FX filter at 77mm. Then finally, I will be adding the 77 to 82mm step up ring again. Now I can attach the 82mm filter thread variable ND onto this particular lens. It's a little wonky, and the more elements you add in front of your lens, the less quality the image it'll be. However, you're adding effects to your image anyway, so that degradation in quality is part of the effect that you are looking for. So those are the different Prism Lens FX filters that I have. If you're thinking of getting a few for yourself, I highly suggest getting the Dream FX filter. It has the most range of use. You could use it just to flatter the skin just a little bit, or have a more cinematic shoot, bloom the light a little bit more. And with that, you also have options. If you want even more bloom, you could try the Moment Cinebloom 20%. The next filter that I would suggest you guys getting would be the Flare FX filter, be it the rainbow, the blue, or the orange. I look how that exploding light looks. For me, it's a little bit more cinematic. It has a little bit more character, but it's not too much where it'll be distracting to the viewer. Then if you do a lot of photos and you really want to make more effects in terms of the image that you get, you can try out split diopter or the center split diopter. The center split is a little bit more useful for me because it's easier to put your subject in the middle rather than on top or in the bottom half. Then last on my rank will be the kaleidoscope filters. That's more photo, that's more one-off if you really want that kaleidoscope feel. It's a little bit too much for me, but you might find use for it. But those will be my ranking. Dream FX number 1, Flare FX number 2, and then the center split diopter number 3 with the split diopter and the kaleidoscope filters way after that. Those are my Prism Lens FX filters. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I will make sure to answer each and every one of them. Thank you again for your time. I hope I get to see you guys again in the next video. Until then, hope you have a great day.